I can't tell him that. I can't tell him.
You have to.
Can't. He's never gonna forgive this. How is he gonna forgive that?
She called me a liar. She called me a scammer.
There are moments on reality TV that make you gasp, but then there are moments that make you want to hide behind your couch. Picture this, Lisa, face burning with embarrassment, caught in the middle of a disaster so shocking, even the producers looked away. One night, one accident, and suddenly the entire internet is talking about what happened in that bed. But if you think that was the worst part, you're not even close. Because what exploded next wasn't just a mess on the sheets, it was a mess that tore through every secret Lisa and Daniel tried to hide. A marriage certificate nobody expected, accusations flying about who's using who, and a love story that starts to look more like a chess match with green cards and broken trust on the line. Shame, suspicion, and the kind of drama that makes you question if any of this was ever real. Or if it was all a game from the start. I'm Oliva, and this is Reality Sport. If you're ready for the wildest ride 90 Day Fiance has ever served, hit subscribe, drop your hottest take in the comments, and buckle up, because this story is about to get messier than anyone imagined. Before the world knew Lisa and Daniel as the couple who broke the internet, they were just another pair trying to stitch together a long-distance romance with more hope than common sense. Lisa, with her quick laugh and stubborn streak, thought she'd finally found someone who saw past her baggage. Daniel, all about tradition and family honor, seemed to believe he could build something real with a woman from a world away. Their video calls were awkward but sweet, full of promises and nervous smiles, and for a moment, it almost looked like they might beat the odds. But then came the night that changed everything. The kind of night that reality TV producers dream about and cast members dread for the rest of their lives. It started as a regular evening. The two of them sharing a cramped hotel room, nerves jangling from the pressure of cameras and the weight of expectations. Nobody could have predicted what would happen next. In the middle of the night, Lisa woke up to a disaster so mortifying, it instantly became the stuff of internet legend. She had an accident in bed. One that left Daniel frozen, eyes wide, caught between shock and disbelief. The silence in that room was louder than any argument. Daniel didn't yell, didn't storm out, didn't even reach for his phone. He just sat there, staring at the mess, as Lisa scrambled to clean up, her face a mask of humiliation. Viewers couldn't look away. Social media exploded with memes, hot takes, and secondhand embarrassment. But what nobody saw was the way that moment cracked something between Lisa and Daniel. The embarrassment didn't fade with the sunrise. Instead, it settled in the air, thick and heavy, making every conversation feel forced, every touch awkward. Daniel's patience looked saintly on camera. But behind his calm eyes, you could see the questions starting to form. Was this a one-time accident, or a sign of something deeper? Could he ever look at Lisa the same way again? And for Lisa, the shame was only the beginning. She could feel Daniel pulling away, even as he tried to act normal. But if you thought a little humiliation was enough to break this couple, you're in for a shock. Because what happened next made the bed disaster look like a warm-up act. Secrets were about to surface, and the real drama was only getting started. From the outside, Lisa and Daniel looked like every other couple on the show. Awkward, hopeful, and maybe a little naive about what it takes to blend two lives from opposite sides of the world. But underneath the surface, their differences were already starting to show. Daniel grew up in a world where family means everything, where your choices reflect on your parents, your siblings, your entire community. For him, relationships aren't just about two people, they're about honor, tradition, and doing things the right way. He talks about marriage like it's a sacred promise, not just a piece of paper. Lisa, on the other hand, comes from a place where independence is survival. She's been through messy breakups, raised her voice in arguments, and learned to keep her guard up. Her past is complicated, and she's used to handling things her own way, even if it means bending the truth to keep the peace. The first warning signs were easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. Daniel's patience seemed endless, but sometimes it felt more like he was waiting for something. Watching, listening, collecting little details. Lisa, usually quick with a joke or a comeback, started dodging questions about her past. When Daniel asked about her family, she changed the subject. When he brought up marriage, she laughed it off or gave answers that didn't quite add up. It was subtle at first, the kind of thing you might chalk up to nerves or culture shock. But Daniel noticed. He's the kind of person who believes that honesty is everything, and every time Lisa sidestepped a question, his suspicion grew a little sharper. There were moments when the tension slipped through the cracks. Daniel would ask about her last relationship, and Lisa's eyes would dart away. He'd mention meeting her family, and she'd suddenly remember something she needed to do. The more he pressed, the more she pulled back, and the more viewers started to wonder what she was hiding. Was it something small, like a messy breakup, or a family feud? Or was there a bigger secret lurking in the background? Something that could blow up the entire relationship. Daniel's friends and family started to notice, too. They'd call him, worried that he was moving too fast, that he didn't know the real Lisa. He'd defend her, but even he couldn't ignore the feeling that something wasn't right. The trust that should have been growing between them was already starting to crack, and every awkward conversation made the gap a little wider. Lisa tried to act like everything was fine, but her nerves were showing. She laughed a little too loudly, changed the subject a little too quickly, and every time Daniel looked at her, you could see the question in his eyes. What aren't you telling me? But the real shock was still waiting in the wings. Because while Daniel was busy worrying about Lisa's secrets, he had no idea that the truth was about to hit him harder than anything he'd ever faced. The next reveal wouldn't just test their relationship, it would flip their entire story upside down and leave everyone wondering if either of them could be trusted at all. As the days passed, Daniel's calm started to look less like patience and more like calculation, at least to the people watching at home. Every time Lisa stumbled over a detail or dodged a question, Daniel would nod, smile, and let it slide. But his eyes never stopped searching her face. The internet lit up with theories. Was Daniel really the devoted fiancé? Or was he playing the long game for a shot at a new life in America? The whispers grew louder with every episode. Friends back home grilled him about his plans, asking if he was sure about Lisa, if he was sure about leaving everything behind for someone he barely knew. Daniel always answered with the same line. He loved her. He wanted to build a future together, but even his closest friends could hear the hesitation in his voice. Lisa felt the pressure building, and it started to show in every part of her life. She called Daniel constantly, desperate for reassurance, her voice cracking when he didn't pick up right away. She started second-guessing every word, every gesture, terrified that one wrong move would send him packing. The more anxious she became, the more Daniel seemed to pull away, and the cycle fed on itself until every conversation felt like a test she was doomed to fail. Lisa's friends tried to comfort her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing control. She'd fought so hard to find someone who made her feel wanted, and now she was watching it slip through her fingers, one awkward silence at a time. Viewers couldn't get enough of the drama. Some said Lisa was the real manipulator, hiding her past and playing the victim to keep Daniel close. Others were convinced Daniel was the mastermind, willing to put up with anything for a shot at a green card. The truth was messier than either theory. Both of them were clinging to the relationship for reasons they couldn't admit, even to themselves. Lisa needed Daniel to fill a hole she'd carried for years, a fear of being alone that kept her up at night. Daniel saw Lisa as a ticket to a life he'd only dreamed about, a chance to escape the expectations that weighed him down at home. Every sweet moment was shadowed by suspicion. Every fight left them both wondering if they were being used. The tension reached a breaking point when Daniel's family started asking questions Lisa couldn't answer. Why was she so secretive about her past? Why did she seem so desperate to keep Daniel from leaving? The more they pushed, the more Lisa unraveled, and the more Daniel started to wonder if he was making a huge mistake. But even as the green card drama threatened to tear them apart, Neither of them knew that a secret was waiting in the shadows, one that would make every argument about motives look small by comparison. The real bombshell was about to drop, and when it did, nothing would ever be the same. The moment the truth slipped out, it felt like the air got sucked out of the room. Daniel sat across from Lisa, waiting for her to answer a simple question about her past, and instead, he got a confession that shattered whatever trust they'd managed to build. Lisa was still legally married, not separated, not divorced, married. The words hung between them, heavy and impossible to ignore. Daniel's face went blank, his hands clenched tight in his lap, and for a second, it looked like he might get up and walk out without saying a word. The shock was written all over him, a mix of disbelief and something deeper. A kind of moral outrage that comes from feeling played by someone you thought you knew. Lisa tried to explain, her voice shaking as she stumbled through excuses about paperwork and delays. She said the marriage was over in every way that mattered, that she'd been trying to get the divorce finalized for months, but life kept getting in the way. She blamed lawyers, slow courts, and a mountain of red tape. But Daniel wasn't buying it. In his world, marriage is sacred. A promise you don't break, and finding out that Lisa had hidden something this big felt like a slap in the face. He asked her why she hadn't told him sooner, why she'd let him believe they were building something real when she was still tied to someone else. Lisa's answers only made things worse. She said she was scared, that she didn't want to lose him, that she thought she could fix it before he ever found out. But every word sounded like another excuse, another reason for Daniel to doubt everything she'd ever said. The fallout was immediate. Daniel's trust, already fragile, snapped under the weight of Lisa's secret. He started questioning every story she'd ever told, every detail she'd ever shared about her life. Was anything real, or was it all just another lie? Lisa could see the anger in his eyes, the way he looked at her like a stranger, and she knew she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She begged him to understand, to see how hard she tried to make things right, but Daniel wasn't listening. He was too busy replaying every moment in his head, searching for signs he'd missed, wondering how he could have been so blind. The internet exploded with opinions. Some viewers felt sorry for Lisa, convinced she was trapped by circumstances beyond her control. Others saw her as a master manipulator, willing to say anything to keep Daniel from leaving. But nobody could deny the damage was done. The secret marriage wasn't just a legal problem, it was a betrayal that cut to the heart of everything Daniel believed in. And as the dust settled, one question lingered in the air. If Lisa could hide something this big, what else was she keeping from him? Because buried even deeper in her past was a secret that would make this bombshell look tame. And when it finally came out, it would push Daniel to his absolute limit. When whispers about Lisa's past started swirling, Daniel tried to brush them off, but the rumors wouldn't die. It wasn't just the legal marriage that had everyone talking, it was the revelation that Lisa's previous spouse was a woman. For Daniel, raised in a family where tradition is the backbone of every decision, this was more than a surprise. It was a direct challenge to everything he'd been taught about love, marriage, and what's acceptable in his world. His parents had always drilled into him that marriage is between a man and a woman, that family honor depends on following the rules, and that anything outside those lines brings shame not just to the individual, but to everyone connected to them. Lisa's past wasn't just a detail. It was a bomb waiting to go off. Daniel's relatives started calling, their voices tight with worry and judgment, asking if he knew what he was getting into. They warned him that marrying someone with a history so different from their own would bring gossip, suspicion, and maybe even rejection from the people he cared about most. Daniel felt the pressure mounting, torn between the woman he thought he loved and the expectations of the family that raised him. Every time he looked at Lisa, he saw the risk written in her eyes, the fear that her truth would be too much for him to handle. Lisa, for her part, tried to downplay the significance of her past. She said love is love, that what happened before Daniel shouldn't matter if their feelings were real. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that he'd been left out of the most important chapters of her story. He wondered if she'd ever planned to tell him, or if she was hoping the truth would stay buried forever. The more he thought about it, the more he questioned whether he could trust her at all. Was she hiding other things? Was their relationship built on secrets instead of honesty? The cultural stakes were enormous. In Daniel's world, marrying someone with a past like Lisa's could mean losing the respect of his elders, being cut off from family gatherings, or worse, being seen as someone who betrayed his roots. The personal stakes were just as high. Daniel had always prided himself on being patient, on giving people the benefit of the doubt. But now he felt that patience slipping away. Pride and tradition pulled him in one direction, while his feelings for Lisa tugged him in another. He started to wonder if love was enough to overcome the weight of history and expectation. As the truth about Lisa's past threatened to come out in public, both of them knew a confrontation was inevitable. The next time they sat down together, it wouldn't be about small talk or apologies. It would be about whether their relationship could survive the collision of two worlds, or if the secrets they tried to hide would finally tear them apart. The stage was set for a showdown that would test their limits and force them to decide what mattered more: the future they wanted, or the past they couldn't escape. Lisa's world started shrinking the moment Daniel's trust cracked. She could feel it in the way he looked at her, the way his voice lost its warmth, the way he started answering her questions with silence. The pressure built up until it spilled over, and suddenly Lisa was crying in the middle of conversations, her voice raw and desperate, begging Daniel not to give up on them. She called him at all hours, sometimes just to hear his breathing on the other end, sometimes to plead for another chance, sometimes to apologize for things she couldn't even name. The fear of losing him gnawed at her, turning every small disagreement into a crisis, every unanswered text into a sign that the end was near. Her friends tried to help, but Lisa's anxiety was a storm that wouldn't let up. She started calling her daughter late at night, her words tumbling out in a rush, searching for comfort and reassurance. She wanted someone to tell her it would all work out, that Daniel would forgive her, that love could survive even this. But the more she reached out, the more isolated she felt. The people closest to her could only watch as she unraveled, powerless to stop the spiral. Lisa turned to drinking on the worst nights, hoping a glass of wine would dull the ache in her chest. But it only made her emotions louder, her tears messier, her pleas more frantic. Daniel watched all of this with a kind of cold patience that unsettled everyone around him. He didn't yell, didn't storm out, didn't even raise his voice. Instead, he listened, his face unreadable, his words measured and careful. Some people saw this as strength, a sign that he was trying to keep the peace, to give Lisa space to explain herself. Others saw calculation, a man weighing his options, deciding whether to stay or go, using Lisa's desperation as leverage. Every time Lisa broke down, Daniel seemed to grow more distant, as if he was building a wall between them, brick by brick, with every tear she shed. The dynamic between them shifted in ways that made viewers uncomfortable. What once looked like a partnership now felt like a negotiation, with both sides trying to get what they wanted without giving too much away. Lisa's apologies started to sound rehearsed, her promises to change lost their power, and her emotional outbursts became routine. Daniel's patience, once admirable, now looked suspicious. Was he enduring all of this because he still cared, or was he waiting for the right moment to walk away with the upper hand? Every gesture, every word, every glance was scrutinized by fans and family alike, searching for clues about who was telling the truth and who was playing a part. Lisa's emotional collapse wasn't just about losing Daniel. It was about losing the version of herself she'd tried so hard to protect. She'd always prided herself on being strong, on surviving whatever life threw at her. But now she felt exposed, vulnerable, and completely out of control. The shame of her secrets, the fear of abandonment, and the weight of Daniel's disappointment pressed down on her until she could barely breathe. She tried to fix things the only way she knew how, by promising to be better, by swearing she'd never hide anything again, by begging Daniel to see the good in her. But the more she tried to hold on, the more he seemed to slip away. Daniel's restraint became a weapon in its own right. He never gave Lisa the satisfaction of knowing what he was thinking, never let her see how much her actions had hurt him. He kept his feelings locked away, showing only what he wanted her to see. This made Lisa even more desperate, convinced that if she could just break through his calm exterior, she could save what was left of their relationship. But Daniel wasn't giving anything away. He watched, he waited, and he let Lisa twist in the wind, never revealing whether he was planning to forgive her or leave her behind. The people around them started to take sides. Some blamed Lisa for the chaos, saying she'd brought it on herself by hiding the truth and refusing to face the consequences. Others blamed Daniel for being too cold, too calculating, for using Lisa's vulnerability against her. The truth was, both of them were trapped in a cycle they couldn't escape, each feeding off the other's pain and insecurity. The relationship became a battleground, with trust as the prize and manipulation as the weapon of choice. Lisa's breakdowns grew more intense as the days went on. She'd cry until she couldn't speak, her hands shaking as she tried to explain herself one more time. She'd beg Daniel to remember the good times, to see past her mistakes, to believe that they could still have a future together. But Daniel's responses were always the same, calm, distant, and impossible to read. He'd tell her he needed time, that he was thinking things over, that he wasn't ready to make a decision. Lisa clung to these words like a lifeline, hoping that patience would pay off, that love would win in the end. But underneath it all, both of them knew the truth. The damage had been done, and no amount of apologies or promises could erase the past. The trust that once held them together was gone, replaced by suspicion and doubt. Every conversation was a minefield, every silence a reminder of what they'd lost. Lisa's desperation and Daniel's cold patience became the new normal, a dance of pain and regret that neither of them knew how to end. As the tension reached its peak, everyone watching knew that something even bigger was coming. The secrets that had already come to light were only the beginning. Buried beneath the surface was one final truth. A secret so explosive, it would force Daniel and Lisa to confront everything they thought they knew about each other. The ultimate test of trust was on the horizon, and when it arrived, it would leave no room for second chances. Daniel always thought he'd seen the worst of it. He'd survived the humiliation, the secrets, the endless apologies. But nothing prepared him for the moment he learned the truth about Lisa's past marriage to a woman. It didn't come out in a dramatic confrontation or a teary confession. Instead, it slipped into the conversation almost by accident, a stray comment from a mutual acquaintance who assumed Daniel already knew. The words landed like a punch, and for a moment, Daniel couldn't even process what he'd heard. He stared at Lisa, waiting for her to deny it, to laugh it off, to say it was all a misunderstanding. But Lisa's face told the whole story. She didn't argue, didn't try to spin it. She just looked away, her silence louder than any explanation. The shock hit Daniel first, a cold wave that left him speechless. He'd spent months trying to piece together the truth, trying to believe that Lisa's secrets were behind them, that they could move forward if they just tried hard enough. But this was different. This was a part of Lisa's life she'd never shared, a chapter she'd kept locked away, and it made him question everything he thought he knew about her. The anger came next, hot and sharp, fueled by the sense of betrayal that had been simmering beneath the surface for weeks. He demanded to know why she hadn't told him, why she'd let him walk into a relationship built on half-truths and omissions. Lisa tried to explain, her voice trembling as she talked about fear, about shame, about not wanting to lose him. But Daniel couldn't hear her. All he could think about was the trust that had been shattered, the respect that had vanished in an instant. For Daniel, this wasn't just about Lisa's past. It was about everything he'd sacrificed to be with her. His family's approval, his own sense of honor, the future he'd imagined for them. He tried to be patient, to give her the benefit of the doubt, but now he felt like a fool. Every promise, every apology, every tearful plea felt empty in the face of this final secret. He wondered if he'd ever really known Lisa at all, or if he'd been chasing an illusion from the start. The weight of disappointment settled on his shoulders, heavy and suffocating, and for the first time he didn't know if he wanted to fight for the relationship anymore. Lisa saw the change in him immediately. The warmth in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cold distance that made her feel invisible. She tried to reach out, to explain that her past didn't define her, that she'd kept the secret out of fear, not malice. But Daniel wasn't listening. He was lost in his own thoughts, replaying every moment they'd shared, searching for signs he'd missed, clues that should have warned him. The respect he'd once had for Lisa was gone, replaced by a sense of betrayal that cut deeper than any argument or accusation. The fallout was swift and brutal. Daniel stopped answering Lisa's calls, stopped responding to her messages, stopped showing up for the conversations she begged him to have. He withdrew into himself, shutting out not just Lisa, but everyone who tried to talk to him about what had happened. His friends and family rallied around him, offering support and sympathy. But Daniel barely heard them. He was too busy mourning the loss of a relationship he'd once believed in, too busy trying to make sense of the lies and half-truths that had brought him to this point. Lisa, meanwhile, was left to pick up the pieces. She tried to reach Daniel, tried to explain herself, tried to find a way back to the trust they'd lost. But every attempt was met with silence, every plea ignored. She turned to her own family for comfort, but even they struggled to understand what had happened. The shame of her secrets, the pain of Daniel's rejection, and the loneliness of losing the person she'd fought so hard to keep left her feeling more isolated than ever. She replayed their relationship in her mind, searching for the moment when everything went wrong, wondering if there was anything she could have done differently. Viewers watched the fallout unfold with a mix of shock and fascination. Some blamed Lisa for hiding the truth, arguing that honesty would have saved them both from heartbreak. Others sympathized with her, pointing out that fear and shame can make people do desperate things. Daniel's supporters saw him as a victim, a man who'd given everything for love and been betrayed in the end. The debate raged on social media, with fans dissecting every episode, every conversation, every tearful confession, searching for answers that never quite materialized. But what most people didn't see was what happened behind the scenes. The late-night phone calls that went unanswered, the messages left unread. The moments when both Lisa and Daniel sat alone in their rooms, staring at their phones, hoping for a miracle that never came. The cameras caught the big moments, the fights, the confessions, the dramatic exits, but they missed the quiet heartbreak, the slow unraveling of two people who wanted to believe in each other but couldn't outrun the truth. As the dust settled, one thing became clear. The relationship was broken beyond repair. Trust, once lost, is almost impossible to rebuild, and respect, once shattered, leaves scars that never fully heal. Daniel and Lisa were left to face the consequences of their choices, each carrying the weight of what might have been. But even as the credits rolled, viewers were left with one burning question. What happens next? Because sometimes, the real story begins after the cameras stop rolling, and the secrets that come out in the aftermath can be even more explosive than anything caught on film. After the dust settled and the camera stopped rolling, Lisa and Daniel's story didn't just fade away. It lingered in the corners of social media, in cryptic posts and carefully worded statements, in the way both of them seemed to rewrite their own history for the world to see. Lisa posted photos of herself smiling with friends, captions about new beginnings and lessons learned, but every so often, a late-night message would slip through. Something about regret, about missing someone she once called her soulmate, about wishing things had gone differently. Daniel, on the other hand, kept his updates short and guarded. He shared pictures with family, tagged at gatherings and celebrations, always surrounded by people, but never quite letting anyone in. When fans asked about Lisa, he'd answer with a polite no comment, or a vague line about moving forward. But the pain was still there, tucked between the lines. Neither of them ever gave a full interview about what happened. Instead, they let the rumors swirl, letting fans fill in the blanks. Some people insisted Daniel was the real victim, a man who'd been honest from the start and only wanted a simple, honest life. Others argued Lisa was the one who suffered most, forced to carry the weight of her secrets and the shame of losing everything she'd fought for. The truth, as always, was somewhere in the middle. Both of them made mistakes. Both of them hid things. Both of them wanted something they couldn't quite name: love, security, a way out, or maybe just a chance to start over. For viewers, the story became a kind of cautionary tale. Was it ever love, or was it always about survival? Did Lisa and Daniel ever stand a chance? Or were they doomed from the start by the secrets they carried and the expectations they could never meet? The show never gave a clear answer, and maybe that's why people couldn't stop talking about it. Every relationship has its share of hidden motives and unspoken fears, but when those fears become the foundation, it's only a matter of time before everything falls apart. Lisa's need for connection, Daniel's longing for a new life, these were real, raw, and painfully human. But when honesty slips, when trust is traded for strategy, even the strongest feelings can't hold things together. Looking back, it's easy to see the warning signs. The awkward silences, the dodged questions, the moments when both of them seemed to be playing a part instead of living the truth. Who was more honest? Who played the game better? Maybe it doesn't matter. What matters is the cost. Lisa lost the man she thought would save her from loneliness. Daniel lost the dream of a future built on trust. Both of them walked away with scars, and both of them taught everyone watching that love without honesty is a house built on sand. The emotional punch lands hardest when you realize how close they came to making it work. If Lisa had told the truth sooner, if Daniel had been willing to forgive, if both of them had chosen vulnerability over self-protection, maybe things would have ended differently. But love and survival don't always mix. When you're fighting to protect yourself, it's easy to lose sight of the person standing in front of you. And when the truth finally comes out, it's almost always too late to fix what's broken. As for what happens next, the story isn't over. Lisa and Daniel's saga is a reminder that every couple on 90 Day Fiance has secrets, and some of them are even bigger than what we've seen here. If you thought this was wild, wait until you see what's coming up next. A couple whose secrets make Lisa and Daniel's look tame, whose lies are so tangled even the producers couldn't keep up. Stick around, because the next story is about to raise the stakes in ways nobody saw coming.